We could talk about the salary cap for next year and how much he's going to account for that. We just talked about if you want to clear up a big chunk next year, I would say not having $26 million ish on the books for Brandon Aiyuk is a quick way to do that. And the hope would be that if they were to trade him for, let's say, a first round pick, that you would not necessarily draft a receiver, but you would beef up your offensive line and try to surround Purdy with protection going forward. So I think providing Purdy with protection, also clearing some major cap space next year, those are probably the biggest pluses to moving on from Brandon Aiyuk. Lastly, if he's just simply not happy here and doesn't want to be here, which I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I think that they're trying to go at things strategically, and he's trying to gain any leverage that he can get here because he doesn't have much, frankly. I think that just getting somebody who's not happy off the books is a smart thing to do as well.
Yeah. And they can say, he's worth whatever on the free agent market. And they can say that if they give him a lot of money, it was worth it. But if you're not going to give him the targets that a receiver making $7 million a year sort of demands, then what's the point? I mean, you can say that it was a good signing, and you can say you didn't overpay, and you can say it was a smart move, and you kept a guy that you developed. But if you're really not going to, he got 100 targets last year. Puka Nacua had 160.
Yeah.
If you're not going to use him like that, then what are you really paying for? Because you're embarrassed to let him go? I mean, I know it's hard. You developed him, but it's like, if this is the offense you want, if you want to run the ball, if you want it to be all about Christian McCaffrey, you want to throw to your X receiver 5-6 times a game, then maybe you don't need to be spending $27 million a year on that position.
It would really suck if they gave him a ton of money, to your point, and used him in crunch games like they do George Kittle, which is not at all.
Right.
That would be a shame.
Yep. Also, if he doesn't want to be on this team, how many players do you want on your team that don't want to be here? You already went through that with Debo. If he doesn't want to be here, the culture of the team is players who love football and want to be here. So you're not going to give him the ball enough to satisfy his contract and his ego. He'd rather go somewhere else. You could get a lot for him. Now, you don't trade him for a pick and then whiff. If you spend it on the next, obviously it's important what you take there, but if you get a really good player in a rookie deal, that's a great trade.
I think that's the biggest thing is, to me, you can't take wide receiver there.
Right.
Because think about it this way, Grant.
Right.
If let's say they traded Brandon Aiyuk for the 22nd pick and they drafted an offensive lineman, and then at 31 they drafted the receiver.
That makes sense.
Even though they're still drafting a receiver with one of their first picks, that receiver and Brandon Aiyuk are naturally not tied together the way that Kinlaw and Buckner were, because that pick went to the offensive lineman. So if that wide receiver busts, as long as that offensive lineman is good, we'll always look at it as a decent trade, and it was the right move. If the 49ers had drafted Tristan Wirfs, the Buckner thing would not be discussed at all. At all.
It would actually be considered a good trade for the Niners.
Yes.
A great trade.
Great trade.
That's the thing about these things. It's not that you can't trade Aiyuk or you can't trade Buckner. You just have to really get it right. And to your point, if you're only going to take a wide receiver with that pick, that really limits you. You just have to get a really good player. Now, when the Bills traded for Stephon Diggs, the Vikings used that pick to draft a wide receiver, and they got Justin Jefferson. So if the player that's great, it happens to be a wide receiver, even better, but don't force it.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. But I look at it and say, there's a lot of offensive linemen that are going to go round one, or so it seems. You're not in there's no guarantee you're going to get one of the guys who's worth a first round pick at 31. You would at say 22. So that's another benefit.
It seems like there's 7-ish offensive tackles who are graded very highly this year.
Yes. Yeah.
Very highly. And if the Niners could get any of those 7, it seems like they'd have a guy who could probably be better than McKivitz right away or quickly, and potentially someone who could replace Trent Williams at the right time. That would be great. It seems like a bad year to just pass on offensive tackles, but we'll talk about that at a certain point.
Yeah, we will.